Hi YouTube, welcome to another edition of Horror Hands. And I was thinking the other day that I myself, one of the reasons why I watch 90% of horror movies is for the kills. We all like to see gruesome, inventive, crazy kills. So there's kind of an understanding that the characters in these movies are expendable. And most of them, if not all of them, are kind of there to be killed off at some point in the film. It's kind of like why you have annoying characters and things like that. But every now and again, a horror film will come along which does a rare thing in the sense that it makes me care about the characters that are in it, and I'm actually rooting for them not to get killed. So I thought I'd go through 10, technically 11 films where you actually care about the character or characters in them. I'll throw a bit of a spoiler alert out. I will be talking about the characters and what happens to them, but these are all pretty well known films, so I think you'll be okay. So we'll get straight into it. So the first movie is An American Werewolf in London, and I'm talking principally about David and Jack, the two guys walking on the moors. And straight away we get the feel that these are just likeable everyday guys. They're just buddies walking across the English countryside, happen to be in the wrong place, the wrong time, and David is attacked by a werewolf, Jack is killed by the werewolf, and then the film begins. And so as we get to know a bit more about David, again, he's a really likeable guy. He's now afflicted by this werewolf curse where he's killing people in the full moon, but he doesn't want to do that. It really disturbs him. He's in a really bad place about it. So at no point do we kind of really want anything that bad to happen to David. You kind of feel sorry for him and realise that he's just a cool everyday guy. Jack comes back into it later as a zombie and manages to be likeable whilst trying to convince the main character to kill himself, which is a pretty impressive thing to pull off. And then the nurse as well, Jenny Agutter's character, you feel for her because she gets mixed up in it. She has feelings for David, and it all, has a bit of a tragic ending. But yeah, three really likeable characters in this that kind of just find themselves in this terrible situation. So that is the first movie. Okay, the next one on the list is Halloween, the original. So Laurie Strode, she was a character who I've always rooted for her throughout the entire Halloween franchise. I thought Jamie Lee Curtis did such a great job of portraying her, and I think one of the reasons why she's so good is because Halloween was such an early slasher film. We'd not quite got the concept of the final girl, so like the final woman who's a bit more sort of morally advanced and isn't kind of getting down with the other kids, a bit more introverted. And Jamie Lee Curtis played that really well, and because we'd not seen that really at all at this stage, it hit harder when Michael Myers started coming after her. So, like I say, throughout the whole franchise, I've always rooted for Laurie Strode. I've never wanted to see her get killed off. And then as well, Dr. Loomis, Donald Pleasance, he was such a great character. And Donald Pleasance, he's played some sinister people throughout the years, but he was such a stalwart gentleman in Halloween, and his performance was so good. I really believed his passion and his urgency to capture Michael Myers, and it was clear that Michael was his life's work. And in Halloween 2, when you think he's blown up in the hospital, I was gutted to think that Dr. Loomis had been killed because of this situation. So yeah, two iconic, really likeable characters in Halloween there. Okay, next up is The Thing, and MacReady, Kurt Russell, and he was the man in this film. He was so cool. The way he took charge of the situation, the way he kept level-headed and took it to The Thing was just amazing. He's such a cool character. And I know The Thing is a bit ambiguous. It has the ambiguous ending where you're not quite sure who's who. But I really hope that MacReady wasn't The Thing at the end of it. And I actually pretty much like all the characters in The Thing. I like them all, but I really like the alien transformation scenes. So my appreciation of the characters does kind of subside a little bit because I want to see some transformations. I want to see some assimilation. But McCready, he was the man. He was so cool. Okay, next up is the Carter family from The Hills Have Eyes. And this just came across as a very kind of realistic, normal family. They were just out on vacation, and they run afoul of this cannibal tribe. But they just seem very very down to earth and identifiable people. The father, he was a retired cop, so I'm sure he's done a lot to serve his country. He didn't really deserve to meet his end the way he did in this film. And everyone else in it, they're just kind of, they're not really like fighters or violent people. They just plunge into this situation. So kind of naturally you see that, and you're more rooting for them. You don't really take any glee in seeing them killed off and suffered, because there's nothing about them. They're just everyday people like sort of us and our family. So it's always been a film where I've not really been kind of thirsty to see blood and deaths. I was more siding with the family and hoping that they'd be okay. So yeah, Hills of Eyes. Okay, the next film on the list is Get Out. So Chris from Get Out, I thought he was a really good character. Very cool, very likeable guy. Very identifiable in the sense that you're kind of in this situation with him. So he goes to visit his girlfriend's parents, and it's kind of just one of those situations where on the surface things are nice and amicable, but you just get a sense that something's not quite right in this household. And Chris kind of senses that, we kind of sense that, so we're sort of with him on that. And throughout the course of the film, events transpire, things happen, things get even more creepier, and it's like something definitely isn't right in this house. And when we kind of get to the end and the final acts, at this point you've been with Chris through this whole weird ordeal that you're just rooting for him to get out of the house and get out of this situation. But yeah, I really like, again, I really like the likability factor of Chris. He's not he's not sort of super smart. He's not sort of seemingly all that heroic. He's just an everyday guy. Would probably react to this kind of situation the same way as me and a lot of other people. And I like that about Get Out, and I like that about Chris. So yeah, he was a cool guy. Okay, next up we have Evil Dead, and Ash. Couldn't do this list without Ash. One of the coolest guys in movies. It's a great performance from Bruce Campbell, because he's kind of like, he's both unassuming yet really heroic as well, and that's kind of explored throughout the franchise. Sort of by the time we get to Evil Dead, he's embraced that heroic side of himself even more. But in the sort of the first two Evil Dead movies, he's just like a regular guy that finds himself wrestling with these demons and monsters. And he really gets knocked about as well. He's not like this indestructible hero that knows what he's doing. He gets knocked all over the place and beaten up by these demons and things like that. But all the while, he's really cool. He's witty. You're rooting for him, and he's understandably become a very iconic character. So yeah, I don't know how anyone could not like Ash. And throughout the whole Evil Dead franchise, I'm rooting for him to kill the demons and rescue the girl and all that kind of thing. So yeah, he was really cool. Okay, next up we have Child's Play, and this is for Andy, who may be the greatest kid in a horror film ever. He's got to be up there, because, I mean, let's face it, 95% of kids in horror films are annoying. They say stupid stuff, they get in the way, they usually can't be killed off because they're kids. But Andy, he was a genuinely sweet little guy. He was a cute kid, and I really felt for him throughout the first two Child's Play films. He took it like a trooper. He really did his best to defeat Chucky. But he has such a nice, sweet, innocent vibe about him, and it worked really well with like the evil Chucky doll and the way that they interacted with each other. And his line at the end of the first one when Chucky says, "Friends till the end," and he goes, "This is the end, Chucky." Oh, that was so cool. I was just, really rooting for Andy in that moment. I'm really happy that he didn't get killed. It would have been terrible to see Andy get killed in those first two films when he was a sweet little kid. So yeah, gotta love Andy in those early Child's Play films. Okay, next up we have The Fly. So Seth Brundle from The Fly, which is a wonderful performance by Jeff Goldblum. Very, very sweet, likeable guy, and he really nails it because there's not really a lot to him, which is kind of the point. He doesn't go out, he doesn't socialise, he doesn't really have much of a presence about him, which kind of makes his transformation even more horrifying, especially when he starts to become a bit more highly strung, going into like an aggressive side. It's really shocking to see that character change from the sweet, quiet guy at the beginning to this horrible monster that he becomes. And you can tell he's a brilliant man as well when he's really passionate about what he's doing. He's doing it for the right reasons, so he's not an evil scientist. And watching the thing is a very interesting experience because for someone who is a total monster movie fan, really I should revel in the gooey, gruesome, practical monster effects that are created throughout the film. But with The Fly, I'm actually kind of wanting Seth to get better or reverse the process. So I'm actually not really wanting to see this monstrous transformation that's ensuing. So for a monster movie fan to not want to see the monster, that is some really impressive filmmaking. Cronenberg did really well with that aspect of the film. And then Gina Davis as well. Her character in this was really good. I really felt for her because she feels for Seth. She wants to help him, but she can't, and she's kind of both. She loves him deeply, but at the same time, she's horrified and sickened by what he's become. So trying to act that out must have been a real feat. But she nails that role too, and you kind of feel sorry for them both. So yeah, bit of a sad horror film, that one. Speaking of sad horror films, next up we have Carrie. So Carrie White, and I don't know if I've empathised more with a horror character more than Carrie White. She has it hard in this film, man. From being mercilessly bullied at school, to having this power that she doesn't understand, to probably the most frightening aspect of the film, having to live with her psychotically religious mother, played frighteningly well by Piper Laurie. She really has a lot of hardships in this film, and it's just a really sad film. Carrie has always struck me as quite unique in its sadness. You don't see a lot of horror films that are sad and tragic to this level, and it doesn't really have a lot of staples that other horror films have, really. I mean, you have the annoying teenagers in this that get their comeuppance, but it's a whole different story. It's not like just a killer on the loose that's killing off the annoying one and the jock and the one that does drugs, things like that. There's a whole different kind of tragic story behind Carrie, and it's always just struck me as one that elicits a lot of just kind of sorrow for the character involved, and I think that's really interesting. That it's Carrie isn't a malevolent presence or figure. She's just a bullied schoolgirl, which is quite fascinating. So yeah, I've always really empathised and in a strange way, rooted for her because of the hardships that she faces. But yeah, very, very sad film. And then last up, I'm going to do these two films kind of together because these are maybe the best films for having characters that I care about, and that is Aliens and Alien. So I start with Aliens. That has not all the characters, but a handful of characters that I just absolutely love. So Ripley, Hicks, Vasquez, Bishop, Apone, even Hudson, who's like the annoying, cocky, wise guy. He was such a likeable character in this. You really have sort of a rapport with these characters that I mentioned. And even when I watch it now, every time I see it and Hudson gets pulled down into the floor, my heart sinks, even though I know what's going to happen. Such likeable people. You're really rooting for them. and you get the sense that they are kind of this tight-knit band of soldiers. They're all kind of like looking out for each other, and yeah, it's just one where every time I watch it, I just sort of like when Vasquez is in the air duct, and you're still rooting for it to make it out of that air duct, and things like that. So really impressive in that sense. But then even more so, I would say, is Alien, because I think this is probably the only horror film where I care about every single character in it. I don't want to see any of these characters get killed off, and I'm always gutted when they do. I really feel for them. And again, similar to Aliens, I just feel like these are a real kind of tight-knit group of people. Other than Ash, who's a kind of excluded because of kind of what he is. They just seem like genuine people that have worked together. There's a bit of conflict between them, but I think they've been together so long that that's just understandable. Again, apart from Ash, nobody in it seems to have any kind of agenda or any kind of sort of deceptive nature about them. They're just there to do a job and get out of there. But unfortunately, they find themselves up against this terrifying creature. And yeah, I don't know what it is about it, but I just don't want to see any of them get killed off. That is really impressive filmmaking, to have every character in it likeable to that extent that you don't want to see the alien get them. It's really impressive. So there you go, guys. That's 11 films which feature characters that I really cared about and didn't want to see get killed. Let me know what characters you have who you always root for and you don't want to see get killed either. I'd be really interested to know. So thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.